Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got something intense lined up for you. We're diving into two incredible true stories where ordinary people found themselves in the middle of terrifying crimes. These are the kinds of moments that can change a life forever. So grab a seat because you won't want to miss this. How I accidentally witnessed a crime, and it changed my life forever. Hi Reddit, this happened a few years ago, and I still can't forget what happened. I always thought of myself as an ordinary person living an ordinary life, but one day everything changed. At that time, I worked remotely and hardly ever left the house. But there was a park near my home where I liked to walk in the mornings to clear my head before starting work. I usually didn't meet anyone there. The park was quiet, especially on weekdays. But that day was different. I went for my walk at 7 a.m., as usual. The weather was cool, and the morning mist hadn't lifted yet. The park was quiet, with only the occasional sound of passing cars somewhere beyond the trees. I passed my usual bench when I noticed something strange. In the distance, at the end of the path, was a black SUV. It looked out of place, too polished and expensive for this area. It made me uneasy, but I didn't think much of it. Continuing my walk, I heard muffled voices. They were coming from behind a row of thick bushes near the car. It was odd, usually no one was here at this time. I walked closer, trying to see what was happening. And that's when I saw them. 3 men were standing in a circle, talking tensely. One was in sportswear, another in a business suit, and the third in a leather jacket. Their faces were serious, and I could sense something was wrong. Suddenly, the man in the jacket pulled something from his inner pocket. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a gun. My heart started pounding. I couldn't move. I stood behind the bushes, trying not to breathe too loudly. The man with the gun began speaking louder, his voice becoming threatening. He was demanding something from the others, brandishing the weapon. I didn't understand what they were talking about, but I knew the situation was spiraling out of control. Suddenly, one of the men tried to run, but the man with the gun reacted instantly. I heard a gunshot. It was a loud, deafening sound that seemed to tear through the morning silence. The man in the suit collapsed to the ground, and I realized I had just witnessed a murder. I don't remember how I got out of the park. I think I ran as fast as I could without looking back. When I finally stopped, I was already home, slamming the door shut and locking all the bolts. My heart was racing, and I couldn't stop shaking. I didn't know what to do. On the one hand, I knew I had to report what happened to the police. On the other hand, I was terrified for my life. Did those men see me? Did they recognize me? Could they find me? I didn't know the answers to these questions, and it scared me even more. A few hours later, I finally called the police. I told them everything I saw, but couldn't describe the men's faces. I was too scared to really look at them. The police went to the park, but by the time they arrived, the black SUV and the body were gone. Only tracks on the ground and an empty bullet casing remained. Since then, I've changed. I no longer walk in that park and try to avoid crowded places. I've become more cautious and suspicious. That event haunts me in my dreams, and I don't know if I'll ever forget that terrible day. The moral of this story? Be careful. Sometimes the most ordinary things can turn into something unexpected and frightening. I don't know if the police ever found those men, but I hope justice will be served. 1 cup of coffee cost me my peace of mind forever. Hi Reddit. I've been wanting to share this for a long time, but it's hard for me to talk about it. A few years ago, I witnessed something so horrifying that I still can't sleep well at night. It was a normal day. I decided to work from a small cafe in an old part of town. I often went there. It was a quiet place, usually empty. That day, I sat at my usual table in the corner, ordered a cappuccino, and started working. Everything was going as usual until a man walked into the cafe. He looked strange, dressed in an expensive suit, but there was a weariness on his face and something cruel in his eyes. He scanned the cafe, locked eyes with the barista, and then slowly walked up to the counter. At that moment, I thought he was just another customer. How wrong I was. He started talking to the barista, but I couldn't hear what it was about. It seemed like they knew each other. The barista nodded, and it felt like confirmation of something sinister. The man unhooked a gun from his belt and pointed it at the barista. I barely stopped myself from jumping up and running away. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it could be heard on the other side of town. The man started shouting, forcing the barista to open the cash register. The barista tried to resist, pleaded with him not to do this, but the man was unyielding. He walked behind the counter and began rifling through the register, taking all the money. But it didn't end there. Suddenly, a young woman came out of the back room. She looked frightened, but when she saw the man with the gun, she froze in place. I realized she was an employee of the cafe. The man turned to her, and there was something absolutely terrifying in his gaze. He forced her to come to the counter, and I could see her shaking with fear. The man continued to threaten, demanding something from the barista, but he kept refusing. Then the man grabbed the woman by the hair and, without hesitation, shot her in the leg. The woman's scream tore through the silence, echoing off the walls of the cafe. I felt everything inside me tighten with horror. The barista tried to calm her down, but the man just smirked and pointed the gun at his head. He said something like, "Now you have a choice, either you do what I said, or she dies." The barista, sobbing, nodded and began typing something quickly on his phone while the woman lay on the floor, bleeding. I wanted to do something, but I knew that any wrong move from me could cost someone their life. The man finished his business and quickly left the cafe, leaving behind only screams and blood. I couldn't believe that all of this happened right before my eyes. After he left, I ran to the woman, trying to stop the bleeding. The barista called the police, telling them what had happened. But it was all a blur. I couldn't focus, couldn't understand how this could have happened. The woman was taken away in an ambulance, and I stayed in the cafe, answering the police's questions. They tried to figure out who the man was, but I didn't know. I only described his appearance, but it was of little help. The barista looked broken, as if his life had just been destroyed. It took several months before I could go out again without feeling constant anxiety. But even now, when I see people in expensive suits, I can't help but remember that day. That man, his cold stare, the woman's screams. It will stay with me forever. Thanks for sticking with us to the end. These stories are a powerful reminder that life can change in an instant. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future content. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.